Yes, there we are. So the first question comes from Ian Hodgson at Bauer Media Garden News magazine. And his question is, how can the public best engage with the online Plant Atlas 2020? And what are the potential benefits of doing so? And I think, Julia, this is a question for you to have a go at.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, so the Plant Atlas 2020 website is a really great way to find out more about the wildflowers and plants you care about and what's present in your local area and whether it's increasing or declining. And you can see photos and information about it, as Kevin showed. You can see when it's flowering and you can see more photos there. And as you learn more about your local plants through Plant Atlas, you can then help foster a love of wild plants and share information on the plants you find locally, which will help ensure that wild plants thrive and are valued.
Thank you, Julia. Our second question comes from Richard Bateman, Royal Botanic Gardens, Kew. What major changes do you predict will be reported over the next 2 decades? Kevin, I think that's one for you.
Yeah, I need a botanical crystal ball to answer this one, but yeah, I think if we all implement some of the changes that Julia mentioned in her talk, so improving protection for plants, creating more space for nature, managing land, water and soil more sustainably, and also raising awareness of the importance of all these plants that we love, then hopefully it won't be me, but someone else might be reporting the state of our native flora in 2 decades hence. And I think if we do all those things, then hopefully we will be reporting an improvement and a recovery in the populations of many of these native species. And hopefully that'll be particularly within the farmed landscape. So 70% of our countryside is managed for farming, and there's huge opportunities ahead through new agri-environment schemes such as the Environmental Land Management Scheme, and there's just huge opportunities ahead to basically put plants at the heart of sort of conservation initiatives that are going to take place on that land.
I think we also hope to see some benefits from more increased broadleaf planting as well, Kevin. So there may be opportunities there for particularly the woodland plants.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. We've got a question now from Tim Rich, and I'm going to ask Pete to answer this. What plans are there to revise lists of nationally rare and nationally scarce species in line with Atlas 2020?
Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Tim, for the question. That's an easy one to answer. We've revised the nationally rare and scarce lists, and they're available on the online atlas, plantatlas2020.org. If you go into any species, you'll see that there's on the screen, there's one of the tabs is conservation. And if you click on the conservation tab, there's a list of designations, threat, and also rarity and scarcity in Britain and in Ireland. And so all these have been updated. Just for those that don't know, nationally rare in Britain is if a species is present in 15 hectares or fewer, nationally scarce 16 to 100 hectares, and in Ireland it's fewer than 10 for rare and 11 to 25 for scarce. So they're all available online on the Atlas, but we'll also be producing a note in BSBI News that covers all the changes that have been made following the analysis of the data. Hope that helps, Tim.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you. I'm going to move on. We'll try and cram as many questions in as we can. So I've got a question from Steve Gator here, which I'm going to offer to you, Kevin. Is deliberate planting of plants and seeds distorting our view of species change?
The simple answer is yes. But it's only really the case for natives. Obviously, by definition, non-natives are introduced everywhere in Britain and Ireland. So it's just the natives, and it's particularly the case for grassland species and also our native tree species, because obviously we've had a long history of planting of trees in Britain. So if you take a beech and oak, it's very hard to know where they're actually native. In fact, there was some trees that we didn't even attempt to differentiate the native from the introduced range, because they're sort of, the history of introduction is so confused that it's almost impossible now to know if you're looking at a native stand or something that's been planted 200-300 years ago. But then obviously we've got, since the sort of 1980s, we've had a huge amount of planting of native wildflower seed of native species, particularly grassland species. And again, that's confusing the picture. And obviously that does impact our assessments of change for some of these species. So no, they're not natives, but I mentioned some of the archaeophytes, those cornflower annuals, and we can see that it's even impacting the trends there. So we're seeing a sort of either a leveling off or an actual increase in recent decades, because those species are being so widely sown. So yeah, obviously that does distort our view.
I mean, we give our recorders quite firm guidelines on what to record and where to record, don't we? So, you know, they do try to distinguish between what is actually native and natural and those that are more recent introductions.
Yep, and it's often very hard to tell.
It's
almost impossible to tell. But yeah, we do encourage people, and a huge amount of effort went into the maps in this atlas to try and differentiate between where things had been introduced from where they were native. And so you'll see lots of the maps have got lots of blue and red dots all over them, and that just that reflects the sort of the complexity of the extent to which species have been moved around or planted in the wild across Britain and Ireland.
Okay, thank you for that, Kevin. I've got a question here from Philip Turville of the Field Studies Council. Thinking about the future, what can we do to increase the number of trained, resourced and motivated recorders? Julia, I think you're going to have a go at that.
Thanks, Phil, for that question. Yeah, I mean, training people in identifying and recording our wild plants is really important. And we're delighted that we've got a growing membership. We've got 9% growth in our membership over the past 2 years, each year. And many of our members are keen to pass their skills on, as well as learning new skills themselves. We also offer a number of ways to develop botanical skills, from joining the many field meetings that we run each year and signing up for a variety of courses and online learning opportunities. So we try to encourage all of those people who are involved to also become trainers themselves and to train up more people in botanical recording and identification.
Okay, thank you. I could see in the Q&A box there are many questions coming in, and I'm afraid that our time is limited today, that we're really not going to be able to pick up any more of those, I think. So apologies if you've posed a question, but we're going to answer all of those and put the answers online in response to all those points you're making. There's very interesting questions that we will need to answer quite carefully. But I'm sorry, in this very short session, we haven't got time to answer any more.